Good evening and salutations, my GH fans. I was about to say days. So I want to ask a general question. How does everyone feel so far about the last couple of episodes? Last couple episodes of GH. I want to know, how does everyone feel, including today. How does everyone feel about today's episode of GH? The reason why I say that is because I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy. I felt like this episode was just passable. I know with soap operas, they go through ups and downs and things kind of build up and it's a slow momentum and then it kind of rises and everything like that. And I get that, but yesterday I was watching Days. And I said this in that review. I was like, Days was amazing. Days, I haven't watched it in 2 weeks because of the whole Olympics and everything like that. And I watched it, it came back, and it was fire. It was fire. And, I was sitting there saying in my review, GH is kind of more my heart. But Days, because it has less characters, they can kind of condense a story. They can kind of focus on more people. A lot of times when it gets really good, it gets good. Now, don't get me wrong. When GH is on fire, we all know what that feels like. But some of these episodes have been just kind of lacking a little bit, And for Days to come back on and be like, all right, we're here, back, let's do this. And I watch one episode of that, and I look at GH, and I'm like, what was you sleeping or something? What's going on? I don't know. Yeah, Austin and Chase. And Austin is pretty much just going for full-fledged, let's try to manipulate this guy into getting revenge. He starts just bringing up the fact that they had sex together, and, Willow cheated on you, and yada, yada, yada. And after a while, he kind of realized that, what? I can't sit there and get him with the Willow card. I'm not going to be able to manipulate him into, whatever, with Willow. Michael, that guy's supposed to be your best friend. And he moved you into his house. And he's still sitting there doing your wife behind your back, So he's setting him up. And then he sits there and tells him a story about how there might be a letter that can change, that can contest the will of Edwards. This way he can start to, get the shares and everything like that. He's like, listen, it's somewhere in the room. And he told the story about how Edward and Jimmy Lee in his later years was kind of making up, and, he kind of regretted some stuff, and so he's assuming that there might be a letter. Which is actually kind of, a little far-fetched. I mean, yeah, he could have regretted a lot of decisions that he made with Jimmy Lee. That doesn't mean that he was like, all right, I regret this and that, but I still don't want your hands on my money, But somehow he's like, there might be a letter. Well, basically he was like, there's a letter in Edward's room because Edward's room hasn't been touched, and I tried to find it, but the maid escorted me out. The maid and the butler that's never there. Whenever somebody rings on the doorbell, is one of them that's like answering it. That's always amazing. He was like, I can't get to the letter, but you're in the house. You can get to the letter, and all you have to sit there and do is get to the letter and give it to me, and this way I can get what's rightfully mine. Now I'm looking at this whole situation with Chase, and I'm like, bro, if you do that, I get you want to get back at Michael and Willow, but what about Brooklyn? What about the people that actually took you in? What about the people that actually took you in? Gave you a place to stay. How's that going to look, you betraying them and giving them that letter? And I wouldn't sit there and say screwing them over, but betraying them. And also he did, in this episode, what I did like is that he did realize, he knew that when he married Willow, that it was kind of like he pressured her into doing it. It was kind of on his deathbed, But then I'm sitting there thinking, like, well, if you knew that, then why didn't you sit there and try to back out the marriage after you realized you was alive? You knew you pressured her into this marriage when you were on your deathbed. And you know what? Listen, people could sit there and say that was wrong. And it probably was. But you know what? Listen, the dude is dying. I mean, we gotta sit there and cut him a bit of slack as far as being selfish. I mean, if you can't be selfish when you're about to die, then when the hell actually can you be selfish? I mean, the obvious answer is never, but still. But that's when he was on his deathbed. And the amazing thing is that he knew that, and he was like, yeah, I did that. Okay, so are you gonna, like, when did you thought about rectifying that? But, Austin was like, yeah, she married you when you were on your deathbed, but what about after? She's been lying to you ever since. I mean, and it's all true. The sad thing is that even though Willow is going to be, and people are sitting there writing this in the comment section, is that, why is this so loud for? Willow and Chase had one date. Didn't mean that they were getting back together. So, in reality, it's not so much that she's cheating behind his back, because, they're on one date. But there's a certain lack of common courtesy, and knowing that he feels a certain way for you, and you lying to him behind his back, and you continuing with this marriage even though that you don't feel anything for him like you do Michael. So, again, the majority of the smoke still goes on Michael and Willow. But with that being said, it looked like Chase was having enough of him trying to whisper in his ear to pretty much do bad things. And so he's like, yo, I got PT, I gotta go. He walks into Willow. He wheels himself towards Willow. He sees Willow, he talks to Willow for a little bit. And Willow asks what's going on. And he just stops and he freezes. Now, Austin is, like, looking right at him. Like, just standing practically not that far behind him. Just watching the whole thing like a damn creep. But then he starts sitting there thinking about the cheating and everything like that. Because his plan was just to sit there and come clean. Be like, yo, listen, I'm out. Y'all do what y'all want to do. I'm out. But he decides after he thinks about that, he's like, yeah. No, everything's great. Yep, alright, I'll see you at home. Bye. And that was pretty much about it. And I kind of look at this situation, I'm like, Chase seems like a very principled, proud, and honest and respectable guy. Now granted, you can definitely be compromised by a lot of different things, no matter how principled and whatever you are. But I'm just kind of sitting there looking at this like, it almost seemed like it didn't really take that, take that much for you to sit there and decide to, I don't know exactly what you're going to do, I guess screw over them because you're getting revenge on, you know what the problem is? If Chase would have decided to get revenge on his own, he would decide to get revenge on his own, and not listen to Austin or whatever. And I would be like, alright, cool, that's on you. You manned up, or you got upset, and you decided that this is what I'm going to do, and whatever happens, happens. And I own this. And I would have had more respect for this type of revenge plot, but instead, he's being this, in some ways, this weak-willed person, and having somebody else whisper in his ear, revenge. They did this to you, they did that to you, you need to get revenge. So now he's doing it, but he's not doing it because solely he wants to, but more because he's being manipulated. Like, really? Meanwhile, back at the Quartermains, actually his name is Edward, but Ned called a family meeting, basically sitting there telling Brooklyn, Michael, Monica, Olivia, and I feel like I'm missing someone, but pretty much telling them that, listen, Tracy kind of informed us about a letter that might be somewhere in the house saying that, Edward might have changed his mind. And pretty much Ned was like, I don't know if this is the right thing to do, because if this was quote-unquote grandfather's last wishes, we deny him that, then we're disrespecting Edward, So should we really do that? But then I think Brooklyn was like, well, we don't know if that's what Edward would have wanted, or if grandmother or somebody tampered with this letter, or tampered with him or whatever, as far as getting him to change his mind. We don't know. So we can't sit there and give in to his demands if that's not what Edward really wanted. So they go back to basic, and it's just like, all right, cool, we're just going to sit there and blackmail him. I mean, we're going to bribe him and do whatever you got to do to get him out of our lives. They just go right back to that because they don't even know. They don't even know if that's the right thing to do as far as, like, this is what Edward would want. Which is true. So everything is a little kind of all up in the air. What else we got? Oh yeah, towards the end, Brooklyn once again asks Michael, if you and Will are going to be a thing, what's going to happen to Chase? I mean, he is my friend. Like, what's going to happen to him? And, Michael just gives this half-assed answer of, oh, well, everything's kind of up in the air and everything is very complicated, but, we'll figure it out and we're doing the best we can. I was like, are you really doing the best we can? Are you really doing the best you can? Because you just seem like you're just like, all right, cool, I'm just going to wait for you forever. You just seem like, he just doesn't give an answer, and, his indecisiveness is something else that's just been bothering the living hell out of me. You want this woman, but you're all like, I mean, listen, there's nothing wrong with being patient, but there's a fine line between being patient, and I don't want to sit there saying being played, but like being patient and whatever the hell it is that he's doing. But he gives his pretty much non-answer, and I think this happens before or after, and honestly, to tell you the truth, Brooklyn doesn't get the answer that she wanted, and I also felt like Brooklyn didn't really push hard enough to be like, yo, listen, this is my guy, this is my boy, I want to sit there and protect him. What are you doing? Are you going to sit there and tell him or not? Because this whole sneaking behind his back is disrespectful and it's wrong. But she's not doing that. She, and I know that, they're cousins or whatever, but this soft approach that she keeps doing to Michael is, like, not working. And I get it. It's not really her business, but, Chase is your friend, so in some ways it's somewhat of her business, I guess. So, Sean and Sam find Naomi on the floor dead, with, like, no blood. But then again, apparently there was, like, drugs or something like that in the system, I don't know. They found her on the ground. And then, Sam is like, well, I'm going to sit there and call the cops. I'm going to sit there and call us in. And Sean's like, I don't think that's a good idea because you're on your parole. You don't know if this is going to violate your parole. You should sit there and leave. So, Sam is like, all right, I'll call somebody I trust. She calls Dante. And Dante's like, so you just rolling the dice with your last, a little bit of time that's left on your parole. And, Sean's like, I told her this, but she didn't want to leave. And Sam, Sam said something along the lines of, well, there's a dead body, so I didn't want to sit there and leave. I'm like, what? Sean was right. I mean, yeah, I get it's Dante or whatever, but, like, technically he could have been like, yo, listen, this is all sorts of violating your parole. You should have left. Instead, she's sitting there checking dead bodies and just waiting till the cops come in, and I get it. I do. But, I don't know. Honestly, tell you the truth, at this point, I'm sitting there thinking, like, well, maybe she would have left, and that might have actually looked worse, so I don't know. Anyway, Sam and Sean kind of fill Dante in on everything that's going on so far as why they came back, the fact that, somebody killed her and it was, like, hiding the truth of where Hayden's at, just filling them in on everything. And then Finn comes in, and Finn is, like, all shocked and kind of devastated because of Violet. So, they find some pills, and they're like, yo, maybe maybe it was a suicide. But, I mean, honestly, to tell you the truth, what it really comes down to is that they try to make it look like it was a suicide. So now at this point, Sean's like, listen, whoever is willing to kill Naomi is willing to sit there and do this to keep, like, make sure that people don't find out where Hayden's at. And I'm sitting there looking, and I'm thinking about this, from Sam's, like, the whole Sam thing. And I remember Sam, granted, she said that she was going to be, like, when she was doing work or whatever, she was going to make sure it was, like, not as dangerous or whatever. But I'm sitting there thinking, you broke up with Jason because, well, his life was too dangerous. But you decide to sit there and get into this investigation where people are willing to kill to cover up the truth of what's going on with Hayden. Now, at this point, I would sit there and think, all right, Sam, maybe you should kind of just bow out gracefully, let Sean and somebody else take it from here. Of course, that wouldn't give her anything to do, but then I also sit there and to kind of look at it like, you kicked this man to the curb because of his dangerous life, but yet you have no problem doing it yourself because you're doing it. Okay, alright, that makes sense. I'm gonna be honest, the whole Felix being in this episode was just like, why? I mean, I'm not gonna lie, this was probably the most boringest part of this episode was Liz and Willow kind of, Liz, Willow, and Felix. It's all Felix and Liz was sitting there doing was talking about memory lane when they first started off as being as nurses and yada yada yada. And I'm just like, yep. Okay. Yep. It seems so boring, so unnecessary. And it was like, alright, so we just got in Felix because why again? I just felt like this whole scene was just, I don't want to sit there and say not as important, but just kind of really boring as hell. I'm also sitting there just looking at, Willow's, career path. And I know she said she was going to be doing, some sort of teaching job at the hospital at one point. But now she's just going for a full-fledged nurse. And I'm like, what happened to that teaching degree? I mean, there can't just be one school in all of Port Charles. I remember she got fired because of some BS that happened before, but I'm like, you can always sit there and try to apply to other places. This just seems, I mean, she spent so much time to get this degree as a teacher, and then out of nowhere, alright, cool, I'm going to be a nurse. Okay. Don't get me wrong, it's not sitting there saying you can't do, you can't sit there and choose a different career path, but it's like, why leave the one that you honed your skills on for so long, just sit there and be like, oh, you know what, I want to be a nurse now because, I saw a rainbow yesterday, and yep, made me want to be a nurse. What? Spencer, Trina, and Nicholas. So Nicholas confronts Spencer about the whole, Ryan Chamberlain letter. And basically was like, he's upset with him because Spencer didn't tell Nicholas about the whole Ryan Chambers thing. And so he's getting upset with him. They're going back and forth. And honestly, to tell you the truth, it's like Nicholas was coming at him with that heat of practically accusing him of him being the stalker, but not actually outright coming out and saying it. So they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, there was one part that Spencer said that was just like, it just reminded me again, and not that I really need reminding of, it just reminded me of just how stupid his whole revenge plot was. Because he was like, well, I made no secret about, me disliking Ava because, Ava could have testified against Valentine, but she didn't do it because she chose to fix her face. And I'm like, wasn't your face burnt when you were a little kid? And you practically stayed inside, were just shut in because you didn't want anyone to sit there and see you looking all disfigured? But you're going to sit there and come at Ava because she didn't sit there and testify against Valentine. Okay, what about actually coming after Valentine? Because Valentine was the one that shot you out the window. But no. I'm going to get upset with her because she had to sit there and fix her face. Dude, are you... Now, at some point, Nicholas does kind of back off. He backs off. He makes a fake phone call. And he tells Spencer, listen, I got to go out of town for a little bit. And so he leaves. And he talks to someone. He's like, yo, book me a room somewhere in Port Charles. Let this, I guess, party be a reminder or something like that. Apparently he's going to teach him some sort of lesson or whatever. And it's all had to do with the fact of that, the whole cockroach incident. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's just not adding up with Spencer. But I think what the smart thing for him to do is, instead of just accusing him of him being the stalker, actually get evidence. This way, you know, you can't sit there and worry about, oh, you're going to push him away, like Alexis said. Like, no, this time you have him dead to rights. So it seems like that's what he's going to sit there and do. Now, the whole conversation between Trina and Spencer, I'm not going to lie, I don't even remember it. I was just like, yeah, I don't remember. I think he said something about a party. Like, you know, he's going to really take them to a party for Trina. And, yeah, it was pretty much about it, more or less. I'm not going to lie, I didn't really care too much of what they had to talk about. And I don't remember it being that important. But if it was, please let me know in the comment section below. I think that's pretty much about it. Like I said, this episode wasn't terrible. I know it's building up into, you know, it's building up for something. You know, the whole Chase thing is building up for his revenge on Michael and Willow. You know, the whole contestant in the will thing, as far as Austin, that stuff is building up. There's a lot of build up. But, you know, I'm sitting there thinking about Ryan Chamberlain or whatever when he was out there running around doing all sorts of stuff. And I was just like, man, this was exciting. And again, this show needs a good villain. Trying to turn Chase into some sort of an antagonist is like, okay, that can kind of work. But this build-up of whatever it is taking so long that it's like, alright, today, now he decided he wants to sit there and, I guess, plot revenge on Michael and Willow and the Q's, even though they allowed him to stay at their house. I'm like, okay, alright, this can work, because then, you know, we get more layers to Chase, but it's like, it's taking so damn long. It's taking so damn long. And it's funny, too, because I was watching one of Brock TV's, not first reviews, but like something that happened like 2013. He was sitting there saying that, you know, a lot of the times certain writers would sit there and draw out storylines. And I'm just sitting there thinking, how long is it going to be before Chase decides to really put a lot of his plans and a lot of his stuff into action? You know, there's a lot of build up, but there's nothing that's going on. So it's just, why am I holding this like this for? It's like in this episode, it was like, there was some good tension a little bit in some scenes, and like even the stuff with Sean and Sam was interesting to me because, well, I didn't watch that, you know, the other, like the reboot of stuff. So it was interesting to me, but it's like, could we get to somewhere soon? Like I said, this episode wasn't bad, but there was parts that was just kind of boring. It was like, and I hate when the episodes like this are just middle of the road or kind of average. One, because it makes me feel like when I do these reviews, that my reviews are middle of the road and kind of average. And I don't like that. And two, that was an hour of my goddamn time that I feel like they, in some part, it kind of wasted. And a lot of times, I feel like me talking about the review, talking about the episode, is usually more fun than watching the episode. I don't know. I love GH. I have been watching soap opera since One Life to Live. I'm going to go on a rant for a little bit, so if you want to just stop it now, it's cool. I've been watching soap opera since One Life to Live. One Life to Live, I started watching Port Charles. And that was great. I mean, looking back at it now, there was some stuff that was probably silly as hell, but it was great. And Port Charles got me into GH because they used to do a lot of crossovers and stuff like that. And I felt like me not watching GH was kind of doing a disservice a little bit because it's like not getting a whole piece of a pie. So it got me into watching GH. And even back then, when it was great, it was really great. Like, they had some amazing episodes, some amazing villains. You had Alcazar. You had, I was going to call him Michael Michelson. You had Jerry Jacks. also plays Michael Michelson. But you had Jerry Jacks. You had a lot of good villains. You had Elena Cassadine. I mean, hell, even Starbro seemed like he was kind of fun and interesting in his own weird and goofy way. You had Nell. It's like, who do we have as a villain? I mean, we're kind of waiting at this point for Ryan to like wake up or to kind of do stuff. It's like, but until then, we get these middle of the road average episodes, and you know, when we had Cyrus, it was great, but then we just go right back into this. And I'm pretty sure I forgot about the part of Finn telling Liz that Naomi's dead. And I forgot because you know, it's like these episodes aren't terrible, but they're just scraping by. And when I've been watching the show as long as that, GH, and then I go to Days and I watch it, I was like, yo, this episode is fire. GH, what are you doing? It's not sure. But, you know, I get to talk about it, so that's probably the best part about watching this episode, was actually talking about it. And, you know, just talking about it with everyone, you know, my subscribers, everyone that watches the videos and stuff like that, and just kind of interacting in the comment section. That's fun. That was more fun. Yesterday I was more fun than actually watching the episode. They really need to do something, because this is clearly not working. And with that being said, I am done with my rant. Thank you for watching. Be safe. See you in the next video.